So as some background, in Utah, we have more than 30,000 Utahns under some sort of correctional control. So that looks like jails, prisons, probation, and parole. And this comes at a $1.42 billion price tag, and that's just in our current fiscal year, our budget right now. So this report examines how Utah defines and tracks recidivism, what it costs the state, and how Utah's rates and policies compare to those of the mountain state neighbors and leading states nationwide. We'll talk about programs, partnerships, and policy changes Utah has adapted to help people successfully re-enter their communities. So I do want to preface this all with policy change depending on data. That's a big overarching point here. Without standardized metrics and reporting, policymakers lack the insight needed to identify necessary reforms and their direction. A safe and fair criminal legal system requires a clear understanding of which policies and practices are effective. Those working within the system and those striving to improve it must champion transparency and collaboration to drive meaningful change. So I'll go over some of our key findings of our report as well. And this is one of them. It's that Utah has the lowest rate of people under correctional control under the mountain states and ranks 7th lowest nationally. So that's 901 for every 10,000 residents. And so you can see here on the screen how we compare. And we're looking pretty good if that's all you're looking at. But when we look at how much we spend per inmate per year, Utah spends more than most other mountain states. The only state that beats us is New Mexico at almost $20,000 more per inmate per year. The average for the mountain states is $60,000 a year, and the average across the US is $57,000. And you can see Utah at the striking price tag of $79,000 per year, and that's each individual inmate, right? That's pretty striking.
So when you say that we want fewer people in the correction system, and we want more of our people to be contributing members of society, are you going to talk about the policies and laws that land people in prison?
A little bit. We can see a lot of states that have reduced
their population by changing their laws and policies.
Yeah. So Colorado, California specifically, those two states have had a huge reduction in recidivism rates because they have changed their marijuana laws specifically.
Understood.
California specifically changed some of their petty theft laws so that they're misdemeanors, not felony charges. And a lot of that is about what the state views as a higher caliber risk. Is somebody such a risk that they need to be locked up, or can they be supervised out in the community?
And I guess societal costs. I mean, if you incarcerate someone and then you have this other family instability and housing disruption and stuff, then you come up with these other costs. And how does that balance with this petty theft or whatever that used to be a felony in California?
Mm-hmm. Yes, by keeping a family intact or keeping children out of foster care, because it's a landslide of expenses on the tax.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not only family instability, but then you've got the $100,000 or whatever the cost in California, $50,000 per inmate. So you're throwing somebody in prison, and suddenly this person stole something, and that's going to cost the state $50,000 in order to rehabilitate them or whatever happens in prison. I say that in quotes. That's scare quotes.
Right.
Rehabilitate.
Okay. Thank you. Please continue.
Good question. So going back to tracking recidivism, like I said, each state tracks recidivism differently because there's no federal metric to define how we're tracking recidivism. Most states, so 35 states, track recidivism using just the 3-year reincarceration rate. So say Sean goes to jail, he robbed a bank, he gets out, he robs a bank within 3 years, he's a tally, okay? Sean has recidivized within this metric. Utah, in 2023, got our first metric put into law, and that is that 3-year rate, but we exclude technical violations because we're seeing those as a lower caliber risk. So say Sean robbed a bank, he's out on parole, and then he breaches the terms of his parole. Maybe he handled a firearm. Maybe he, maybe he was at a shooting range, right? Like maybe Sean did something that's very Utah, like going out in the West Desert, shooting some cans, but that's a violation of his parole. So he goes back to jail. We're not viewing that as recidivism, technically, within our metric, because that's a lower caliber offense. Does that make sense? Okay, so you can see most of the mountain states have the same tracking metric, except Idaho. Idaho does have some additional caveats, just like Utah does. And another cool thing here is that Utah is the only state that measures recidivism like this. Everyone else includes those technical violations.
Which is actually kind of funny. I don't know if it's funny, but it is interesting that this is not, we don't talk about this in the report, but Utah, people in jail in Utah, we have one of the largest proportions that are in jail or in prison because of technical violations. So we exclude them in our recidivism rate, but we put the hammer down on this technical violation thing. We're more likely to throw people back.
So your first time could be because of a technical crime or violation.
Yeah, so I did what did I do first? I robbed a bank?
He robbed a bank.
So I robbed a bank.
He did have like not something technical to land him in prison the first time.
So that was an actual
felony.
crime.
Okay,
yeah, my
actual
actual
crime.
felony. I was let out, and I'm in Utah. I'm more likely I go out to the West Desert and shoot some guns. I land myself back in prison within that first 3 years of being released. That is excluded in the recidivism rate, but I'm a part of a group of people in Utah. We're a larger proportion. The people that are in prison are more in Utah. People in prison are more likely to be in there for technical violations compared to other states.
Thank you for making that clarification.
If that was clear.
So it's odd that I'm excluding it from tracking when it's the most likely reason I'm recidivized.
I mean, it's a good question. It's I don't know if it's odd. It's a curiosity, but because it depends on what you want to measure. It depends on if you want to measure those technical violations and just anybody who goes back in, or if I've been reformed and I'm not going to commit any more big things, any more big felonies, but I did this smaller thing and it landed me back in. So I guess it's hard to say. It's hard to say which is right. I think Utah's a little bit more unusual, especially in the mountain states.
And some states seem to have a really low parole and probation rate where people don't get parole and probation. And so Utah, we are putting our people back out in the community trying to...
We're lenient on our giving you probation and letting you out?
I don't know if I'd say we're lenient, but we try, right? We try to have people come back into the community and kind of graduate those sanctions, right? So that you can come back, rejoin your family, get a job, do all those things that you're trying to, our end goal, right, is to not have people in prison, because that saves us as
Our
taxpayers.
pardons and parole board are generous.
Perhaps, yeah,
Compared to some other states. So when we look at some of the state programs that Utah has that are new and ongoing programs, we have a lot that try to reduce recidivism. One thing that the Utah Corrections Industries does is that they start re-entry planning on day one of incarceration. Inmates have classes that they can go to that teach things like how to write your resume, how to make doctor's appointments, things that are what we would think are basic things that we should know. Maybe some people don't know how to do that, right? If you are in prison for a while, maybe you've forgotten how to do that. Another great thing that they are doing right now is important documents such as birth certificates and social security cards are printed for inmates upon release and just given to them for free, so that is not an additional barrier to getting employment and housing. Teaching job skills is a traditional way of lowering recidivism, and the Utah Correctional Industries offers training in various trades, such as data entry, furniture making, or furniture manufacturing and printing. Another couple of programs that are new is that we recently put out a new role called the Peer Support Specialist. And this is someone who was previously incarcerated themselves, has re-entered, and was looking for a job. And I don't think that there's a time limit on how long they had to be out of prison before they could get this job. But essentially their role is helping their peers come back into society. Maybe they will come with them to a doctor's appointment. Maybe they'll help with a mock interview, stuff like that, to provide mentorship to help this person successfully reintegrate back into society. Another pilot program that we have is the High Frequency Offender Program, also known as the Frequent Flyer Felon Program. And this was part of a bill in 2024 on criminal justice reforms. And this program examines those who cycle through the criminal justice system very rapidly. And we're trying to figure out how to intervene differently with these individuals. So this program includes a couple hundred people with 6 or more felony convictions over a 5-year span. And so this group receives pre-sentencing reports and special attention from adult parole and probation to better understand which issues are causing these individuals to recidivate. And we won't actually know how effective these 2 programs are for several years because they are very new, but in my mind, they seem very promising.
Do they see that there are trends in the reasons? So if you're a frequent flyer, which is, I don't know if that's bad slang or just slang.
I think it's slang, but I think it's fantastic.
It makes sense to me what you're explaining. If that is your situation, do they find that it is childhood trauma? Oh, across the board. It is low self-esteem, across the board. It is lack of skills, across the board. So are they seeing that the hurdles are similar so we know how to address them and help these people?
I mean, Ashley did look into this a little bit in the incarceration report that preceded this, and some of the things that she found were like looking at in people in prison and people with multiple felonies. It seems like people that had gotten a felony early, the more likely you do it early, the more likely you're going to do it often. There was a big component to experiencing homelessness as a young person. I can't remember. Do you remember a couple other ones that popped out? Those were 2 big ones for like regularly being a frequent flyer.
I understand. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
But also to answer your question, so one thing that Utah has been looking at for the last several decades are why folks are getting, going back to jail. And so we have specialty courts, and other states have also looked at specialty courts. And so there are things like, they call it family dependency court, which is often your kids are potentially going to be taken away by the state if you go back to jail. Maybe we're dealing with substance use issues. But there's also a drug court, there's a mental health court. We have several specialty courts that focus on these specific issues that keep bringing people back to jail. And actually,
Is that unique to Utah?
No. So it's not super prevalent, but Colorado Justice Reinvestment Initiative was another specialty court program that I highlighted in this report. They bring together judges, police officers, mental health providers, attorneys, and they create a group of people to help fill in these gaps that they're seeing that are bringing people back to jail. So when we look at the mountain states, we do see some ongoing new programs like the specialty courts. We see multi-sector collaboration, public-private partnerships, and local private efforts that are part of the strategies that aren't just unique to Utah, but we can see emulated in other states. And so to me, that says that maybe we're on the right idea if other people are doing a similar thing. Another one that was neat that I want to highlight is that New Mexico received state funding recently to update its central data tracking system. And so this is still really, really new within the last year or so. The last portion of my report is about California, Oklahoma, Oregon, and South Carolina. These are some states that had the largest reductions in recidivism across the country. And so they have strategies like sentencing reform, individualized risk assessments, and stronger employment support after release. And like you were talking, Sean, so South Carolina has this Youthful Offender Act that focused on expunging first-time offenders, their records, if they were between 17 and 25 years old, to reduce them going back to jail later and reduce the impacts of that really early record. So that's super neat. Oregon also investing in some data and metrics. Like we talked earlier, California's Proposition 7 reclassified several nonviolent felonies, such as drug possession and petty theft, to be misdemeanors, so that folks were not in prison as much, but under supervision. So yeah, this latter half of this report did just have some really great programs that if Utah's not specifically doing a program similar, they're really great programs to emulate. But in conclusion, we have an issue here, right? We have people going back to jail. Even if we're not at the highest rates, we still want to focus on people. Yes, ma'am.
I am wondering about partners like the Other Side Academy. So the various aspects of the Other Side, they work with people who have homelessness. They work with people who have drug addiction, mental illness, that whole bag of cats. And so are organizations like that also reducing recidivism? Is that integrated into the court system to say, we know that organization is helping this overall picture? And there are probably other programs, but that one in my mind seems to be on top of what is really going on, having a lot of measurable success, dealing with a lot of the different levels of the things that you talked about in terms of the reasons people experience recidivism. Do you think that organizations like that are supported maybe by grants or funding can also help reduce our number and have people reentry into being contributing members of society? I guess that's always the goal.
Yeah.
Or at least not do no harm. Do you know anything about that in terms of its role in this report?
Absolutely. So we actually called out Other Side specifically, and John Vulcan Academy, which used to be Red Barn something. I don't know. They recently changed their name. So these two programs specifically work hand in hand with the courts, and instead of a longer prison sentence, sometimes inmates can get a reduced prison sentence with the agreement that they will enroll in one of these programs and, I don't want to say serve their time in these programs, but
participate in the program.
Yeah, exactly. Participate in these programs to learn job skills, learn interpersonal skills, because sometimes we are just lacking interpersonal skills, and that is something that is a contributing factor to a lot of these issues.
Yes.
So yeah, Other Side's fantastic. In the report, we also shouted out True Religion Pancake House in Utah County. They are a spot that specifically helps with
employment, job experience, a place where you feel like you can belong, have a role, get that self-esteem back.
Exactly.
So are there also job reform? So if I'm an employer, do you know of employers in Utah who are willing to hire former felons?
So
like Pancake, the True Religion,
exactly,
focuses specifically on that.
So there are some employers that label themselves as felon friendly, and that is fantastic for individuals who are looking for jobs, right? There are some like Mavericks I know that are branded as like specific like second chance places. However, some inmates or formerly incarcerated folks feel like that is putting them into an environment where they are only around people with a record, and they don't want to be only around people with a record. And sometimes we don't have the ability to hire, right? If your staff is full, right? So one thing that I saw the Utah or Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce do this past year is they are encouraging anybody to hire somebody with a record, and they are helping felons and people with a record educate employers on federal protections that exist for them. And so there are some federal protections that protect employers from theft, from fraud, from certain things that you might be concerned about if you hire someone with a record. And so that has been a really cool push that I saw, was Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce saying, okay, employers, you guys are saying you need somebody to hire. Here's this group of people that want jobs. Let's put you guys together. So, in conclusion, recidivism, it's not just a matter of public safety. It's also a matter of cost, community stability, and the futures of more than 30,000 Utahns. Utah has made real progress from establishing specialty courts and establishing a recidivism metric. This is tricky, though. We do want to really pat ourselves on the back, but we don't want to stop here. This could be a sign that we are delivering results, but there's still more work to be done. I know we have talked a lot over here. I would love to hear your guys' questions and concerns from our Zoom friends.
This is Brian. I can just maybe share a couple of things with you. Utah does have a program through it. It's kind of just being implemented actually, and frankly, they're not doing a great job of the implementation. But it's called the Justice Involved Reentry Program, and what it is as individuals get ready to be released from jail 90 days before they're released, they're supposed to be put into a Medicaid program where they'll have case managers that will help them with housing, with obtaining medical and behavioral health appointments, so that they're there and ready to go when they leave jail. Because that's really, you guys have mentioned a number of things that that bring people back into prison, which are not having the right home, or not having a home at all, not having access to medical and behavioral health services and medications, and not having, as you mentioned, a job. Those are three things that are really important. So that's what these case managers are set out to do, is to kind of, it's a handoff from the jail to these caseworkers that follow these individuals, help them get housing, help them, and usually the housing people help them get jobs, but also help them get into behavioral health treatment. If it's substance use disorder, they'll get them the right medications and the right training. But that's kind of what's going on right now. It's just, for some reason, it's just not taking off as quickly as we had hoped. But that is out there, and should be a great program in the near future, before the end of the year.
All right. Well, if you don't have any other questions, thank you all so much for listening to Ashley today, going through this report, and giving your feedback, and asking some great questions, and just supporting the Utah Foundation.